So
For
anyway,
sure.
yeah, and so they got me thinking, right? Of course, esports podcast. That what if we applied this to examples possibly in esports, right? Whether we know anybody or have seen any examples of this. So I asked David, our homie David. Shout out to David, Nintendo Grandpa.
Love that guy.
Yeah, he's like our local esports historian. He's pretty good with this stuff. So I was like, well, David, like, are there any examples of like dynasties or like this kind of philosophy that are like has existed in like say like CS:GO and Counter Strike? And he was saying so like there's like really talented players out there like Monesi, Zaiwu, and Bit that where they come onto the scene and then like they're like very good. I don't know whether they're always on good teams to start with, right? Or like whether they were developed by good teams already. But one of the examples that we thought about like sort of like how sometimes bringing somebody in that's new can cause a little bit of a refresh. One possible example, this isn't like perfect, but Astralis replacing Kirby with Magisk, right? So Magisk
Oh yeah.
was only
Yeah,
19 years
yeah.
old at the time in 2018. And there's a video by the Score Esports. They're also kind of historians as well, telling stories about esports. And the video is titled "The Man Who Abandoned the Best Team in the World." Kind of LOL there. But so Kirby was like one of the core players of Astralis, very good team of course. And they did end up winning like an E League major, right? So like that's kind of
Mhm.
like the esports version, the CS:GO version of winning the NBA championship or something.
Yeah.
But then he decided to walk away from that actually. So he walked away and joined the North on his own
Oh
accord.
yeah, I
He wasn't
remember
kicked or
that.
anything.
Yeah.
I don't think he was kicked at least, or maybe there's different stories. But he said that basically he was like I don't want to be here anymore basically, and he just like walked away and went and joined North. A lot of Astralis players or Astralis people were kind of sad about that. They were a little bit hurt about that. But then Magisk joined from Team Optic, right? And then right after that, Astralis ended up winning like three back-to-back
Yes.
majors.
Like they had
Dominant.
their era. They had
Just
dominant.
dynasty, right? Like an
They
absolute
changed
dynasty, right?
they changed the meta.
Mm-hmm.
They actually did. They brought that like team execution
Mm-hmm.
utility usage to a new like teams had to learn how to do it basically at that point
Right.
because like everyone was still trying to do the old style of like well
Everybody's jaws drop like, wait, let's just do what
like
Astralis is doing.
yeah
Like,
basically like they used to do that whole game sense stuff and like
mm-hmm.
the standard the old standard which is fine but like to be what Astralis did, they became super coordinated, and having Magist
Mm-hmm.
a part of that uprising, he got to learn with all these super
That's what I
veterans.
was thinking, right? Yeah.
And yeah, so he benefited, I feel like, a lot
Mm-hmm.
while he was on Astralis and during that run of wins,
So
basically.
we were thinking like David was thinking like this is maybe the closest to the situation you might see like say like analogous to the Gold State situation where somebody like Kirby ends up leaving, right? Like that's maybe less of that, but like the Magisk new talent sort of comes in, right? And you integrate them
Hmm.
into a current championship system, right? And then like they just slot in and then they're like, let's go. Like and then it brings them to the next level, right? So I do
Yeah.
find that really interesting in terms of like sometimes we're very focused on sort of like the mental aspect of stuff here and maybe like the more micro aspects. But I did want to think about a little bit like more like team building philosophies in this case. And I thought, the Golden State example, maybe this, the Astralis example that we brought in here is pretty interesting. I should note that Kirby went to North and eventually North did beat Astralis the one time in DreamHack Stockholm 2018. So there is a tiny bit of redemption in his decision, right? At the end of the day, Caribou did leave on his own accord and then ended up beating Astralis in the future, right? So he beat his old former team, but it's not like they had the success that Astralis themselves had after he left, right? So it's almost like
Hmm.
addition by subtraction in this case, and the
Yeah.
addition it was Magisk, which was like super super good. So I thought that might have been like something sort of similar, where like you have the old guard and then the new kind of coming in to help. Other examples that I wanted to ask was I asked another one of our friends, we had him on our show before, Scrubby Bear, Ethan. So Ethan is pretty plugged in with League of Legends, or he was I don't know about now. But it was kind of funny. So I asked him, and he was like, "I'll ask Afromoo. He's the one that knows all about this." I was like, what do you mean you're gonna ask Afromoo? And he's like, oh yeah, like I know him, like I can DM him real quick. And I was like, no, this is like just like a random question I'm asking you like on a Monday afternoon, right? Like I'm just doing a little research for our podcast, right? You don't have to go out there and like distract Afromoo, who's like potentially, is he at Worlds? He's not at Worlds, is he?
He is at Worlds.
Oh, is he?
Oh,
Did he
no,
qualify?
no. He is not at Worlds.
No,
He is
okay,
not at
right.
Worlds.
Well, he could have been at Worlds. I was like, oh my god, are we distracting this guy from anything else besides like what he's trying to do right now? But like,
Stream.
like well, I guess maybe streaming. But regardless, like he's a chill dude and he's really cool. He seems like
He is.
He's like a consummate professional. That is another thing is professionalism
Actually.
in esports, right? So maybe that's a topic for another day. But it was pretty interesting. Ethan never got back to me about other stuff, but he was like, you know what? One day we'll ask Afromoo about this exact same question. I was like, oh, okay. Well, if we can get like an actual professional to talk about this or whatever, even if it's not directly, it would be pretty interesting.
It would be awesome. Who knows? Maybe in the future when we get bigger, like we could actually try to connect with Afromoo about that type of stuff and hear his.
Know if you want, let Afromoo know that you guys want us to talk to him and chat with him. Yeah. So anything else on that?
I would have also. I'm not sure what you think about this, but I remember C9 picking up Stewie 2K.
Oh, okay.
At that time, and at least in North
that was
America, at least in North America,
that was a game changer too.
Because like that's when we had more American teams, right? And I think C9 was already kind of like there was a constant battle of like who's going to take it. And I think when they picked up Stewie, they got more of that like highlight material type player, raw, but like
he plays
still
different.
Yeah. And I'm sure like what's his name? Nothing and Sean Garris probably were like breaking their heads on the wall or whatever at first with Stewie. And Stewie probably was frustrated too because he felt like he couldn't play like himself either. But I felt like both learned to play at times within the system, but also out of the system.
That's probably really good
in my opinion. Hell, in volleyball, there's a term playing in system when you have everything set up, and then like when everything is like erratic, like aka the chaos, like you're playing out of system essentially. And I think that's a good example of what C9 learned to do.
So like these are just a couple like small examples that we off the top of our heads we're just trying to brainstorm and think of some of these esports examples that would like maybe parallel like a team building philosophy in that sense. I would say just like the Golden State sort of dynasty philosophies, Golden State Spurs dynasty philosophy. It would seem like a lot of the time in esports, entire team changes happen pretty frequently too. Entire roster changes or dropping up or picking organizations for players and things like this. That might happen a little bit more in like free agency and stuff like that. So most of the time, I don't really know if this occurs in the sense like a championship team ever really changes it up super much or like tries to bring in new talent. Where like maybe for esports is a little bit more volatile or like the talent might be more spread out like even like globally. So
that's very true.
It might not be necessarily quite the same situation or parallel, but I'd be interested in seeing if anybody else can think of other examples.
I feel like different regions have different styles. We see that in so many different sports and philosophies of making teams too. So 1,000%. I think that's a pretty interesting. Hell, we just mentioned like League of Legends in China is like aggro as hell, and then we can go along with so many different things.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
We'll probably save that for another episode. So thanks for joining us for season 2, episode 2.
So Mike, let's try this. Are you tilted?
I'm always tilted. Are you tilted, dude?
Dude, I'm always tilted. I'm tilted number 1, 2, 3, all the way down the line. I'm always tilted. No matter what episode, no matter what season we're on.